Right, there are mounting calls for embattled National Commissioner of Correctional Services, Fraser, and the government to explain the release of former President Jacob Zuma on medical parole. AfriForum has sent a lawyer's letter to Fraser requesting some information about the decision as well as a copy of the medical report. The Democratic Alliance and the Helen Suzman Foundation have joined AfriForum in threatened legal action if Correctional Services does not give a full written response. The letter said if the requested information was not provided by Friday, the 10th of September, AfriForum would approach the High Court for appropriate relief. To give us a sense on the matter, we're joined by AfriForum's Head of Policy, Ernst Roets. Ernst, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. Friday deadline was what you were looking at here. Did you get a response?
No. Good morning. Firstly, no, we did not get a response. And as you say, the deadline was on Friday, which means that we have consulted over the weekend about the fact that we did not get a response, and the following step for us is to approach the High Court with an application for revision of the decision to grant medical parole to former President Jacob Zuma.
Let's talk about the basis of this letter, what it contains as you try and get some sort of answers.
Yes, so the letter is to get answers to the secrecy and the uncertainty with regard to the decision to grant medical parole in this case. And what we do with the letter is simply to try to make sure that the appropriate legal processes have been followed in terms of the Correctional Services Act and the applicable sections that deal with medical parole. We are concerned that they have not been followed. It seems quite evident that they haven't been followed, but we need to follow a proper legal process. And the first step is to check, to give, in this case, Fraser as National Commissioner of Correctional Services the opportunity to prove to us that they have been followed. In the event that he is not responding to our letter of demand, which we do know he has read, it to us is an indication that we should continue with legal action.
There are three main factors that you ask Fraser in this letter when it comes to getting the information that you want. Talk us through some of those elements that you specifically request within that letter.
Yes. So the first, there are a few questions that we ask in the letter, and again, as I mentioned, these questions were guided by the details of the Act in terms of what the process should be or what the factors should be that go into such a decision. The first question we want to have an answer to is former President Jacob Zuma terminally ill? Because that's the basic underlying question. If you grant medical parole, you can be sick in prison. If you're in prison or in jail and you get sick, that doesn't mean by implication that you get released on medical parole. You have to be really, really extremely sick. So if you are not terminally ill, in other words, if there's not a date, according to doctors, within which a particular time frame you will die because of your disease or your illness, then you can also be released on medical parole if you really are sick to such an extent that basically you won't survive if you remain in prison, that you are so incapacitated and the prison system is not able to care for you. And the question we have is, does former President Jacob Zuma comply with this? We're also asking for the notes, the minutes of the decisions according to which he was granted parole, and we're also asking for the recommendations by the Medical Parole Advisory Board, which we've learned through the media afterwards has not happened. So we are very concerned that the legal processes have not been followed, that in a way former President Jacob Zuma was released obviously because of his political connections and because of his own political standing, and not because his conditions comply with the Act.
You speak about political connections, and we'll talk about the relations that former President Jacob Zuma has with Fraser, just looking at politics. But let's turn the attention now to Fraser admitting that he took the decision without the approval of the board, and that essentially there's really nothing wrong with that.
Yes, he has said that, and what we are even more concerned about is the news that came through this morning in City Press and Rapport that that President Cyril Ramaphosa was also involved with this decision. So we are very concerned that a decision has been taken, as I said, obviously because of who Jacob Zuma is, and not because of whether the legislation has been applied. And the problem with this, well, there are many problems with this, but this clearly sends an indication that in South Africa, according to the justice system, you are being treated depending on who you are. Your identity determines how you would be treated by the justice system. This type of treatment that Jacob Zuma is getting is not the type of treatment that ordinary people in South Africa would get. And it's a matter of very serious concern. It also sends an indication that if it's true that President Cyril Ramaphosa was involved, as the new media is reporting today, that he's not really serious about corruption. Now, we know Jacob Zuma was sent to prison in this case for defying the Constitution, not for corruption, but it was with regard to the Zondo Commission, where he refused to show up and to comply with court orders. But there's no point in saying we're serious about corruption. You know, we're not going to be, we're not going to stand down. You know, we're going to make sure that we address this problem head on. And then once someone refuses to show up at the commission of inquiry where corruption is investigated, and a court rules that this person should go to prison, then that person is only there for a few weeks before a decision that person should be released. So it sends a very clear indication that this so-called fight against corruption is not much more than lip service.
As you speak about the city press, it says that Fraser didn't want to have Zuma dying in prison. Imagine what chaos could erupt if he died in prison. What do you make of that in terms of exactly, without us all knowing the merit of the medical condition that the former president suffers from, but it seems that it is something quite serious, according to the source who's quoted in this paper, to say that what would happen if the former president died in prison? Well, if he is indeed terminally ill, then he shouldn't die in prison, because that's how the legal system is written, and that counts for everybody. If you are in prison and you are terminally ill and you need urgent medical treatment, you should be able to go to a hospital. And obviously there are hospitals in prison and they can treat you in prison medically, but there's a certain point beyond which the appropriate decision is to have that person sent to a place for special treatment. So sure, that's an argument, but if it was this simple, we are very concerned about the fact that there seems to be a lot of evidence coming to the fore which indicates that the appropriate processes have not been followed. We do not know what illness Jacob Zuma has, how sick is he. If it really is that simple, then they should simply reply to our attorney's letter. And as far as they have complied with the act and they're not giving the information to the public, it's just a matter of wasting public time and public money. And it's not about violating. You can't make the argument that we're protecting Jacob Zuma's personal constitutional rights, therefore we're not disclosing any information. It's not a violation of the prisoner's rights if you publish the information according to which you took the decision that he should be released from prison. That's not a violation of his rights. But if you don't do that, it's a violation of the public's rights, because we have civil rights in this country, and it's a matter of civil rights if people just get released from prison, but the appropriate information according to which this decision was taken is not given to the public. You speak about politics being at the center of this decision here, and we've learnt of what has happened. Let's look at the probabilities around Arthur Fraser and former President Jacob Zuma's relationship, him being called an ally of the former president, and why he's believed to be this ally, and why so much controversy around the decision. Yes, it does seem that they are allies or friends, or however you would frame it. And that is part of the reason why we are so concerned about what is happening in this, and why we need to have proper clarity. And if there's accusations or not accusations, credible evidence or sufficient reason to conclude that Arthur Fraser, who took this decision, is a friend of Jacob Zuma, who was released by this decision, then even more so, he should make sure that the appropriate information is released. But that's not the case. We don't have the information. The information should have been released, but it isn't. He did receive our attorney's letter. He did read our attorney's letter. He decided not to reply or respond to this attorney's letter, which to us is sufficient indication that the appropriate next step is to say,
we're going to have to go to court about this.
When asked about this matter and the release of the former president, EFF leader Julius Malema said that it is un-African to question somebody who is sick, saying that if he's ill, that is something that should be respected and no further questions should be asked around that because, you know, the man is supposedly sick and there's no substance in questioning and engaging, and the former president doesn't have to reveal the nature of his illness. What do you make of that?
Well, the EFF, and particularly Julius Malema, have been flip-flopping on this issue to such an extent that I find it amusing that they are so blatantly just changing their positions in public. You would remember, and I'm sure the viewers would remember, that just a few months ago, they had these press conferences where they aggressively pushed for Jacob Zuma to be imprisoned. They were really angry about the fact that he's not in prison, and he should go to prison. And then Malema went and had tea with Jacob Zuma, and then suddenly changed his position. And now it's a violation of justice for Jacob Zuma to go to prison, apparently. So I don't think we should be too concerned. We should take cognizance of what any person says about this issue, and including the EFF. But the EFF's arguments on this is not guided by what is appropriate or what is correct. It is guided by their own political interest.
And very lastly, you say that you will take this matter to the High Court because you didn't get a response on Friday, as you should have gotten a response. What would you, in the end, like to see happen?
Well, so we have corresponded with our legal team over the weekend. The plan is to submit the application on an urgent basis tomorrow. And broadly speaking, there are two things. So we're busy drafting the application, so we will look at this at the detail. But broadly speaking, we want the appropriate information. That's number one. But secondly, if it's true that legislation was dodged and the decision was to release former President Jacob Zuma was a violation of the law, it can be reversed. It's very controversial to reverse a decision like this, but it can be if the decision was just a blatant violation of the appropriate legislation. And that is what we are looking at. So we will be discussing it with our legal team and our counsel today and tomorrow. And once we are ready, which I assume would be tomorrow, we will file our court application.
Okay, let's leave it there for now. Thank you so much for your time.